Close your eyes. Imagine a world map at this moment. Watch how borders shift and flow, how empires rise and fall. Only one civilization endures through the ages, standing firm. This is the story of China. On this land, the interplay of change and continuity may be unparalleled in the world. This video will breathe life into this map. We will trace China's territorial expansion and contraction through 5 millennia, witness the spread of its culture and the evolution of its central structures. Our journey begins in the mists of prehistory, along the fertile banks of the Yellow and Yangtze Sea rivers. 5,000 years ago, the earliest seeds of Chinese civilization took root here. These mighty waterways, winding through what would become China's heartland, provided ideal conditions for the flourishing of early human settlements. 10,000 years ago, the earliest seeds of Chinese civilization took root here. These 2 mighty rivers meandered through what would become the heartland of China, providing ideal conditions for the flourishing of early human settlements. As we journey back in time, we encounter Homo erectus, a species inhabiting this region around 7,500 years ago. The stone tools and traces of fire left by these ancient ancestors reveal the dawn of human ingenuity on this land. Yet the true foundation for the rise of Chinese civilization was laid during the Neolithic Age, beginning around 10,000 BCE. The Yangshao culture, emerging approximately 50,000 years ago, marked a monumental leap. Early farmers cultivated millet in the Yellow River Basin, forming a stable food source supporting population growth. Their painted pottery, adorned with flowing geometric patterns and abstract animal motif, displayed exquisite craftsmanship. Around 5000 BCE, the Yang Xi culture marked a major leap. These early farmers cultivated millet in the Yellow River Basin, creating a stable food source, enabling population growth. They crafted exquisite painted pottery, decorated with flowing geometric patterns, abstract animals, demonstrating artistic sensibilities that influenced Chinese aesthetics for millennia. The Yang Xi people lived in small villages with semi-minus subterranean dwellings for insulation, laying the foundation for settled agricultural life. Over time, the Changshan culture emerged around 3000 BCE, building upon the foundations laid by the Yang Xi ancestors. The Changshan people introduced new technologies and social structures crucial to the development of Chinese civilization. They created exquisite black pottery, demonstrating an artistic sensibility that shaped Chinese aesthetics for millennia. Emerging around 3000 BCE, the Shang culture inherited the foundations laid by the Yangshao culture. The new technologies and social structures introduced by the Shang people became pivotal to the development of Chinese civilization. Their black pottery was as thin as eggshells and exquisitely crafted. More significantly, they began constructing walled settlements. This marked both increasing social complexity and growing defensive needs. These early societies not only advanced technologically, but also laid the spiritual and philosophical foundations that would shape Chinese culture for millennia. Ancestor worship, a custom remaining central to Chinese spiritual life even today, likely originated during this period. Not only did they achieve technological progress, but they also established the spiritual and philosophical foundations that would shape Chinese culture for millennia. Ancestor worship. This tradition, central to Chinese spiritual life even into modern times, likely originated at this time. Ancient people viewed ancestors as powerful deities capable of influencing the present world. This belief later evolved into a complex system of rituals and remembrance. As we approach the dawn of recorded history, we encounter those semi-minus mythical figures who straddle the boundary between legend and fact. They dwell in the hazy borderland where myth and history intertwine. The legendary founding monarch Confucian is said to have taught people to fish with nets, hunt with tools, and domesticate livestock. Shen Nong is credited with pioneering agriculture and herbal medicine, while the Yellow Emperor, Yuan, is revered as the originator of writing, pottery, and even the principles of governance. Though their historical existence remains unverifiable, They embody the collective memory of China's maturing society. Legends surrounding them mirror tangible advancements, agricultural development, the birth of writing systems, and the formation of social hierarchies. These ultimately gave rise to dynastic rule around 2000 BC. At the dawn of China's Bronze Age, we witness the foundational moments of a unique civilization. Ancient Chinese had mastered silk production techniques, a craft that later connected them to the wider world through the Silk Road. They developed exquisite jade carving skills to create astonishing jade artifacts. They forged a distinctive bronze culture, revealing the roots of a singular civilization taking shape. Ancient Chinese had mastered silk production techniques. This craft later connected them to the world through the Silk Road. They developed exquisite jade carving techniques, creating vessels serving both practical and ritual functions, and began constructing complex socio-political structures, which would evolve into China's renowned bureaucratic system. As we stand at the threshold of China's Bronze Age around 2000 BCE, a new chapter in national history slowly unfolds. An era shrouded in mystery and legend. The Zhou dynasty emerges, traditionally regarded as China's first dynasty, though its historical existence remains debated. The story of the Zhou dynasty masterfully blends mythology with emerging archaeological evidence, offering a fascinating glimpse into the transformation from prehistoric society to the dawn of recorded Chinese civilization. According to ancient texts like Sima Qian's records of the Grand Historian, the Zhou dynasty was founded by the legendary figure Yu the Great, whose achievement lay in successfully controlling the catastrophic floods threatening early farming communities along the Yellow River. This flood-minus control legend is not merely a tale, but symbolizes early Chinese understanding of a ruler's duty to maintain social order. His achievement lay in heroically controlling the catastrophic floods threatening early farming communities along the Yellow River. This flood-minus control legend is not merely a tale, but embodies the early Chinese belief in the monarch's responsibility to maintain harmony between humanity and heaven. This concept would shape Chinese philosophy for millennia. Yet its greatest legacy may be the establishment of hereditary rule. This system marked a major shift from tribal chieftaincy to centralized monarchical governance, then laid the foundation for the dynastic cycles that define Chinese history for the next 4,000 years. If the Zhou dynasty truly existed as later texts describe, it represents the first step toward complex political structures that ultimately evolved into China's renowned bureaucratic system. Yet what is truly intriguing is this: despite the scarcity of historical records about the Zhou dynasty, archaeological discoveries astonishingly corroborate its possible existence. Bronze artifacts, palace ruins, and exquisite jade objects unearthed at the Zhou Palace site in Henan reveal an advanced Bronze Age civilization. Some scholars link these discoveries to the legendary Zhou dynasty, though the debate remains far from settled. Particularly intriguing is the sudden emergence of exquisite bronze artifacts around 1700 BC, marking a major technological leap from the Neolithic era. We previously explored how ancient Chinese artisans so rapidly mastered complex bronze casting techniques. The answer may lie in the hidden connection between metallurgy and agricultural practices. This could reshape our understanding of early Chinese technology. Recent research indicates early farming communities played a pivotal role in the development of metalworking techniques. The organizational capabilities and resource management required for successful agriculture may have been applied to complex metal processes like mining, smelting, and casting. This theory challenges the traditional linear view of technological progress. It reveals tighter connections between diverse skills and technologies. Inferences from legends and archaeological evidence. The legendary Zhou dynasty society exhibited hierarchical traits, the emergence of an aristocratic class, skilled artisans, and warriors, signals the nascent form of early social stratification. This complexity is reflected in artifacts like newly unearthed bronze vessels and weapons that once symbolized power and prestige. though the historical authenticity of the Zhou dynasty remains questionable. Its legendary status plays a pivotal role in China's cultural memory, serving as a bridge connecting the mythical era of cultural heroes like Fuxian Shannong to the more verifiable history of the subsequent Shang dynasty. Whether the Zhou narrative originated from a real dynasty or an early Bronze Age cultural compilation, these legends influenced how later dynasties legitimized their rule through concepts like the mandate of heaven. As the dust settled on the Zhou myth, we stand upon a firmer foundation of historical fact as Bronze Age cultures began shaping how later dynasties legitimized their rule through concepts like the mandate of heaven. The mythical aura surrounding the Zhou dynasty gradually dissipated. We find ourselves standing upon a firmer foundation of historical fact. As the dust settles on the myths of the Zhou dynasty, we find ourselves standing upon a more solid foundation of historical facts. As the dust settles on the myths of the Zhou dynasty, we find ourselves standing upon a more solid foundation of historical fact. As the dust settles on the myths of the Zhou dynasty, we find ourselves standing upon a more solid foundation of historical facts. As the dust settles on the myths of the Zhou dynasty, we find ourselves standing upon a more solid foundation of historical facts. With the integration of Bronze Age culture into the Zhou dynasty myth, it influenced how subsequent dynasties justified their rule through concepts like mandate of heaven. As the fog of the Zhou myth gradually dissipates, we finally tread upon a more solid foundation of historical facts. Around 1600 BCE, the rise of the Shang dynasty marked a turning point in Chinese history, stepping out of the murky realm of myth into the clear annals of written records. The Shang dynasty stands as China's earliest dynasty with indisputable archaeological evidence. This is largely due to the discovery of oracle bone inscriptions. These inscriptions, primarily carved on ox shoulder blades and turtle shells, serve as both a window into Shen society and the cradle of Chinese characters, engraved with texts inquiring of deities and ancestors. These artifacts reveal a society deeply rooted in divination and ancestor worship, serving as intermediaries between the mortal and divine realms. Shang rulers heated the bones until they cracked. By interpreting the patterns of these cracks, they divined future. This practice not only reveals the religious beliefs of the Shang era, but also provides the earliest known examples of Chinese characters. This writing system evolved over millennia, ultimately forming the complex ideographic script we know today. The Shang dynasty established its capital near present-day Yinzhou in Henan province. Excavations in the Yangyu area of Henan have uncovered this intricate urban center, featuring grand palace complexes, workshop districts, and ritual sites. The city's layout reflects distinct social stratification. Royal palaces and temples occupied the highest ground, surrounded by noble residences, with artisan workshops below and commoner dwellings on the periphery. One of the Shang dynasty's most astonishing achievements was bronze smelting technology. Bronze artifacts and Shang dynasty sites demonstrate unparalleled technical mastery in the ancient world. These ritual vessels often bear intricate patterns of mythical beasts in geometric designs, serving both religious and social functions. Bronze objects were not merely utilitarian items, but symbols of power and prestige. Their ownership was strictly controlled by the Shang elite. Bronze artifacts unearthed from Shang dynasty sites demonstrate unparalleled technical mastery in the ancient world. Bronze production relied on complex resource management and skilled labor systems. Copper, tin, and lead required extraction, transportation, and smelting. The entire process demanded high organization and technical expertise. Such sophisticated metallurgical skills prompt reflection on the pace of ancient Chinese technological advancement. How did the Shang dynasty master bronze craftsmanship within a relatively brief period? The answer may lie in an unexpected connection between agricultural practices and metallurgical technique. Recent research indicates the organizational capacity and resource management required for successful large minor-scale agriculture were pivotal in driving metal production development. The ability to coordinate large populations, efficiently manage resources, and innovate farming techniques may have directly translated into advances in metallurgical technology. This theory challenges conventional understandings of technological progress. Large-scale agriculture may have been precisely the organizational capability and resource management. The organizational capacity and resource management required for large-scale agriculture may have played a pivotal role in the development and scaling of metal production. The ability to coordinate large populations, efficiently manage resources, and innovate farming techniques may have directly translated into advances in metallurgical technology. This theory challenges our traditional understanding of technological progress as a linear process, and instead points to a more interdependent development of various skills and technologies within ancient societies. Shang society featured a highly stratified hierarchy, with the king serving as both political and religious leader at its apex, followed successively by nobles, warriors, artisans, and farmers. This social structure was reinforced through elaborate ritual ceremonies, most centered on ancestor worship. The Shang believed royal ancestors governed the destinies of the living, thus requiring regular sacrifices and divination to sustain their protection. War played a significant role in Shang society. The large number of weapons unearthed at archaeological sites serves as clear evidence. Equipped with bronze weapons and utilizing chariots, the Shang army was a formidable force. They frequently engaged in warfare with surrounding tribes, both to expand their territory and to capture prisoners for sacrificial rituals. As the Shang dynasty's power began to wane, around 1046 BC, the Zheng tribe, once a vassal state, rose under the leadership of King Wu and ultimately defeated the last Shang king at the Battle of Wu Yi, ushering in a new era in Chinese history. 1046 BCI. The Zhou people, former subjects of the Shang dynasty, rebelled. Under King Wu's command, the Zhou army defeated the last Shang king at the Battle of Wu Yi, ushering in a new era in Chinese history. The Zhou dynasty was thus established, becoming the longest ruling dynasty in Chinese history. The Zhou proposed the revolutionary concept of mandate of heaven, shaping China's political thought for millennia. This doctrine asserted that ruling authority originated from divine conferral, yet was not an unconditional gift. Should a ruler become corrupt or lose virtue, the mandate would transfer to a more virtuous ruler. This concept not only provided philosophical justification for the Zhou's overthrow of the Shang, but also became the legitimacy foundation for dynastic transitions in China's subsequent history. During the Zhou dynasty, China implemented a feudal system. The monarch granted fiefdoms of land to nobles and feudal lords in exchange for their loyalty and military support. This system led to power being dispersed among numerous semi-autonomous feudal states, forming a decentralized political structure. Semi-autonomous feudal states. Though this arrangement initially appeared stable, it ultimately led to the dynasty's downfall. The Western Zhou period 1046-771 BC was characterized by relative peace and prosperity. The Zhou capital was established at Yijing near present-day Xi'an. During this era, the Zhou dynasty continuously expanded its territory, pushing the boundaries of Chinese civilization to unprecedented vastness. They introduced new agricultural technologies, including improved irrigation systems, which boosted grain production and population growth. However, faced with external threats, the stability of the Western Zhou began to waver. 771 BC, nomadic tribes captured the Zhou capital, forcing the court to relocate eastward to Luoyang, thus initiating the Eastern Zhou period 770-1256 BC. The central authority of the Zhou kings gradually declined. The Eastern Zhou history can be divided into two major phases: the Spring and Autumn period 7476 BC and the Warring States period 476-221 BC. During the Spring and Autumn period, feudal lords feudal lords, 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 feudal lord, feudal lord. The central authority of the Zhou kings gradually declined. Eastern Zhou history can be divided into two major phases: the Spring and Autumn period 770, 476 BCE and the Warring States period 475-221 BC. Over several centuries, the feudal states grew increasingly powerful and independent. While the Zhou kings' power waned, the unified Zhou heavenly kingdom disintegrated, devolving into a chaotic landscape of feudal states vying for dominance. Each state competed fiercely for hegemony. Paradoxically, this era of political upheaval gave birth to the most intellectually fertile period in Chinese history. The collapse of central authority and competition among the feudal states created fertile ground for the flourishing of new ideas. This was the age of 100 schools of thought. Thinkers such as Confucius, Laozi, and Mozi developed revolutionary philosophical systems during this period. Among them, Confucius' emphasis on moral cultivation, social order, and governance by the capable exerted a profound and enduring influence on Chinese culture and political governance, shaping the face of Chinese society for millennia. Meanwhile, Laozi's Taoist philosophy offered an alternative interpretation to the tumultuous current of thought through its principles of harmony with nature and non-minus interventionist governance. The Eastern Zhou period also witnessed major technological breakthroughs. The widespread adoption of iron tools revolutionized agriculture and warfare. Precision irrigation systems expanded arable land and boosted grain production. In the military sphere, the invention of crossbows altered battlefield dynamics, while innovations in siege warfare made conquering fortified cities feasible. As the Warring States period progressed, conflicts among feudal states grew increasingly intense and complex, with tens of thousands of troops clashing in epic battles. This era produced military strategists like Sun Wu, whose treatise The Art of War remains profoundly influential to this day. Despite the gradual decline of Zhou dynasty authority, its cultural and political legacy endured. The Warring States period systemated numerous elements of Chinese culture. These traditions persisted from any intruding reverence for ancestral worship, the use of the mandate of heaven to legitimize political authority, and the development of its cultural and political legacy endured. The Warring States period systemated numerous elements of Chinese culture. These traditions persisted for millennia, including reverence for ancestral worship, the use of the mandate of heaven to legitimize political authority, and the development of a sophisticated bureaucratic system. As the Zhou dynasty's influence waned, China entered a period of intense transformation, permanently reshaping its political landscape, characterized by fierce competition and rapid innovation. The Warring States period laid the groundwork for a pivotal turning point in Chinese history. The rise of the Qing dynasty and the unification of China by Qin Shi Huang in 221 BCE achieved what many deemed impossible. This ambitious ruler of Qing defeated his final adversaries, proclaimed himself the first emperor of a unified China. This moment marked the end of centuries of division. Imperial China, as we know it, was born. But how did Qin Shi Huang accomplish this feat? And what consequences did his rule bring? Qin's success traces back to a series of reforms implemented by the legalist philosopher Shang Yang. Serving as chancellor to the future Qin Shi Huang, Shang Yang enforced harsh laws and severe punishment. He established a meritocratic bureaucracy, transforming Qing into a military machine capable of mobilizing vast armies and resources. This efficient system, combined with strategic alliances and ruthless tactics, enabled Qin to gradually conquer the feudal states. Upon seizing power, Qin Shi Huang set about transforming China into a centralized empire. He abolished the feudal system that had defined the Shang dynasty, dividing the empire into 36 commander-i.e. counties, governed by appointed officials. This administrative reform laid the foundation for China's imperial bureaucracy, enduring for over 2 millennia. One of Qin Shi Huang's most enduring legacies was the standardization of societal systems. He unified the diverse scripts of the feudal states into a single script, laying the foundation for modern Chinese characters, weights and measures. Even the width of chariot axles were standardized across the empire, facilitating trade and transportation. A new monetary system replaced the various coins circulating in the feudal states. Yet the most monumental and iconic project of the first emperor was the construction of the Great Wall. Though feudal states had built defensive walls, the first emperor ordered these existing fortifications to be connected and extended into a single colossal structure. This monumental undertaking required hundreds of thousands of laborers, and not only fortified the empire's frontiers, but also became the pinnacle of ancient Chinese architecture. The most ambitious and symbolic undertaking during the first emperor's reign was undoubtedly the construction of the Great Wall. Although previous feudal states had already built defensive walls, the first emperor ordered the existing fortifications to be connected and extended, ultimately creating this magnificent defensive system. This monumental project mobilized hundreds of thousands of laborers to protect the empire's northern borders from nomadic incursions. The Qing dynasty's governance was rooted in legalist philosophy, advocating strict laws and severe punishments to maintain order. While this authoritarian system enabled rapid policy implementation, it also sparked widespread public resentment. The infamous burning of books and burying of scholars, where Emperor Qin Shi Huang ordered the destruction of text deemed incompatible with state ideology, stands as a quintessential example of the regime's attempts to control thought and suppress dissent. Despite its brief reign, the Qing dynasty left an indelible mark on Chinese history. The Terracotta Army, discovered near the first emperor's tomb in 1974, bears witness to Qin Shi Huang's grand ambitions. Within this vast subterranean complex, thousands of life-sized clay warriors, horses, and chariots were intended to guard the emperor's afterlife. Yet the Qing dynasty's harsh rule sowed the seeds of its own destruction. Massive construction projects and military campaigns imposed heavy burdens on the populace, constructed to safeguard the emperor's afterlife. Yet the Qing dynasty's harsh rule sowed the seeds of its own destruction. Colossal engineering and military campaigns imposed heavy burdens on the populace. After Qin Shi Huang's death in 210 BCE, the empire swiftly descended into chaos. Rebellion spread like wildfire. Within just 3 years, the Qing dynasty collapsed. The collapse of Yingzheng's empire gave birth to a new force, whose influence would shape Chinese civilization for centuries. After the Qing dynasty's downfall in 206 BCE, the power vacuum, though lamentable, offered future rulers a vital lesson. How could emerging dynasties avoid the pitfalls that destroyed the Qing? The answer lay in the delicate balance between strong authority and benevolent governance. The collapse of Qin Shi Huang's empire in 206 BCE left a power vacuum, yet offered future rulers a vital lesson. How could new dynasties avoid repeating Qin's mistakes? The answer lay in mastering the delicate equilibrium between firmness and flexibility, centralization and compromise. Born of humble origins, Yu Bang rose to become a rebel leader through exceptional talent. Seizing the moment, he defeated rival warlords, establishing the Han dynasty in 200 BCE, and ushering in an era hailed as China's golden age. Unlike the Qin's harsh legalist policies, Liu Bang and his successors recognized the need for more sustainable governance. The Han dynasty's success stemmed from its ability to both learn from history and innovate for the future. They retained many effective administrative reforms of the Qing, such as standardized writing and weights and measures, yet softened the rigid legal system. The Han emperors' success stemmed from their ability to both learn from history and innovate for the future. They preserved many effective administrative reforms of the Qing dynasty, such as standardized writing and weights and measures, but softened the rigid legal system. Han emperors adopted Confucianism as the state ideology, emphasizing moral education and filial piety. This shift from pure legalism to a blend of Confucian ethics and pragmatic governance ultimately proved successful. One of the Han dynasty's most significant innovations was the establishment of the imperial examination system. This merit-based official selection mechanism enabled talented individuals from all social strata to hold government posts based on knowledge and ability rather than background. The imperial examinations, which tested subjects like Confucian classics, became the cornerstone of governance throughout the Han dynasties over to -1000 reign. During the Han dynasty, China experienced unprecedented territorial expansion. Emperor Wu of Han, who reigned from 141 BC to 87 BC, launched military campaigns, extending the empire's borders far beyond those of the Qing dynasty. These conquests incorporated new territories, resources, and ethnic groups, including the Korean Peninsula, Vietnam, and parts of Central Asia under Ho rule. This expansion had profound consequences, most notably the establishment of the renowned Silk Road trade network, which connected China to distant lands, facilitating the exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies. Chinese silk, prized by the Roman Empire, traveled westward, while exotic crops like grapes and alfalfa were introduced to China. More significantly, the Silk Road became a conduit for cultural exchange. Buddhism first entered China during this period, profoundly influencing Chinese thought and art. Han Dynasty science and technology achieved significant progress. Around 105 CE, Shangzong invented papermaking, revolutionizing document recording and knowledge dissemination. Advances in metallurgy, more sophisticated tools and weapons. Shangheng's water-stock invention in 142 CE demonstrated the maturity of Han scientific thinking in the field of medicine. The Huangdi and Ai Jing, the Yellow Emperor's inner canon, compiled during this era, laid the theoretical foundation for traditional Chinese medicine. Despite these remarkable achievements, the Han dynasty faced severe challenges: power struggles within the imperial court and harem, rivalries among officials, and the expanding influence of unit collectively led to political instability. The empire also faced external threats, particularly from the northern nomadic Xiongnu alliance. In the empire's later years, systemic crises intensified. Heavy taxation imposed to fund military campaigns and extravagant court expenditures sparked widespread popular resentment. Though the Yellow Turban Rebellion of 184 CI was ultimately suppressed, it exposed deep-rooted socio-economic contradictions. As central authority gradually weakened, local warlord factions rose to prominence. As the Han dynasty's rule faltered, China stood on the threshold of a new era. This new epoch would reshape its political landscape. Deep-rooted socio-economic issues. As central authority waned, local warlord factions rose. When the Han dynasty's foundations crumbled, China stood on the precipice of a new age. This transformation, which would reshape the political map and reverberate through history, was about to begin. The fall of the Han dynasty in 220 CE marked not only the end of an empire, but ignited the Three Kingdoms period, an era of warlord rivalries and heroic figures. Yet the seeds of this turmoil were sown long before the last Han emperor abdicated. Environmental factors, often overlooked by historians, played a pivotal role in the empire's collapse. Persistent droughts and floods devastated agriculture, caused food shortages and social unrest. These natural calamities, compounded by the late Han dynasty's heavy taxation and corruption, ultimately created a perfect storm that tore the empire apart. The Three Kingdoms period 220-280 AD witnessed China's split into three warring states: Wei in the north, Shu in the south, and Wu in the southeast. Each kingdom was ruled by ambitious warlords, who each claimed the right to rule all of China. Wei was founded by the cunning strategist Cao Cao, who controlled the fertile North China plain, and the Han capital, the warring Shu, was established by the virtuous Liu Bei, who ruled over the mountainous Sichuan basin, while Shu Han was governed by the esteemed Liu Bei, who commanded the mountainous Sichuan basin, who, under Sun Quan's leadership, dominated the Yangtze River Delta and southern coastal region. This era of division gave rise to some of China's most iconic historical figures. Cao Cao, renowned for his military genius and political acumen, laid the foundation for Wei's hegemony. Liu Bei, who claimed descent from the Han emperors, embodied Confucian ideals of loyalty and righteousness. His sworn brothers Guan Yu and Zhang Fei later became symbols of unwavering loyalty. They were revered as deities in Chinese folk belief. As the youngest of the three kingdoms' principal rulers, Sun Quan demonstrated exceptional governing talent, successfully repelling powerful neighbors for decades. Amidst the relentless warfare of the Three Kingdoms period, warlords vied for the banner of unifying the realm. This prolonged turmoil spurred major breakthroughs in military technology and strategy. At the Battle of Red Cliffs in 208 AD, Sun Quan and Liu Bei's allied forces defeated Cao Cao's massive naval fleet, demonstrating the critical importance of naval tactics and strategy. This battle further highlighted the pivotal role of brilliant strategists like Liu Yang, whose ingenious schemes and inventions became celebrated models for posterity. The vast fleet underscored the strategic value of naval warfare and unconventional tactics. This conflict also emphasized the influence of outstanding strategists such as Zhang Liang. Their ingenious strategies and inventions ultimately became, despite the ravages of war, this era witnessed extraordinary cultural and technological advancements. The demand for efficient communication during warfare drove innovations in papermaking. Han Dynasty papermaking techniques were refined upon this foundation. The persistent need for weapons and armor spurred progress in metallurgy, while the construction of fortified city defenses stimulated innovation in architecture and engineering. The Three Kingdoms period also profoundly influenced Chinese literature and popular culture. Over a millennium later, the epic Ming Dynasty novel romance of the Three Kingdoms romanticized this era and its central figures. This literary masterpiece blended historical facts, folk legends, and fictional element to forge a narrative framework that shaped Chinese cultural identity for centuries. Its tales of loyalty, betrayal, and strategic genius continue to inspire modern creations from opera and film to video games. Yet this history came at a terrible cost. Years of warfare lead to rampant famine and plague. The population plummeted. Many regions saw their populations halved. The Central Plains suffered particularly devastating losses. The weakening of central authority bolstered autonomy in frontier regions, setting the stage for future conflicts between China and its neighbors. The Three Kingdoms period finally concluded in 280 AD. The Qing dynasty, established in 265 AD, when the Sima clan usurped the Wei state, had by this time subdued all rival factions. Though the Qing briefly unified China, this unity proved fleeting. The epic saga and legends of the Three Kingdoms reverberated through China's historical currents for millennia, profoundly shaping political thought, military strategy, and cultural expression. In 280 AD, the Qing dynasty unified China, seemed to herald a new era of stability after the tumultuous Three Kingdoms period. Yet this unity proved both fleeting and fragile. The Sima clans, usurped Qing dynasty, soon plunged into internal strife and external threats, plunging China once more into prolonged division and upheaval. Qing dynasty. The turmoil within the Qing dynasty began in 291 AD, shortly after its founding. A series of conflicts erupted among imperial family members, known as the Eight Princes Rebellion. During this brutal 15-year civil war, cousins engaged in merciless slaughter over power. This conflict severely undermined the Qing dynasty's authority, making it vulnerable to foreign invasions. Taking advantage of the Qing's internal strife, northern nomadic tribes began advancing into China's heartland. These non-Han ethnic groups, including the Xiongnu, Xiongbi's, Anbi, Xiongbi, and the Zhou authority, severely weakened its external defense capabilities. Northern nomadic tribes exploited the Qing dynasty's internal turmoil to advance into the central plains. These non-Han ethnic groups included the Xiongnu, Yongbi, Di, and others, who established their own regimes in northern China, thus ushering in the chaotic era known as the 16 Kingdoms. From 300 to 439 AD, short-lived dynasties rose and fell in rapid succession. War raged incessantly among the feudal states. The Qing dynasty proved incapable of maintaining control over the north, and relocated southward in 316 AD. That same year, the western Qing capital Luoyang fell, and Emperor Hui was captured. This catastrophic event marked the collapse of the western Qing dynasty. The eastern Qing dynasty was subsequently established in Zhongning, present-day Nanjing in the south. Although the eastern Qing controlled the economically prosperous Yangtze River basin, political fragmentation and warfare dominated the era. Yet it also witnessed significant cultural and technological advancements. Interactions between Han Chinese and nomadic peoples fostered rich exchanges of ideas and practices. Military tactics evolved by sedentary agricultural societies to counter steppe cavalry. Art and architecture blended traditional Chinese styles with Central Asian motifs and techniques. Buddhism, originating in the later Han period, flourished during this time. Against a backdrop of political turmoil, feudal lords increasingly patronized Buddhist temples, viewing Buddhism as a means to legitimize their rule and pacified diverse ethnic groups. The Yungang grottos, carved near Dating by the Northern Wei dynasty in 460 CE, stand as a testament to Buddhism's deepening roots within Chinese culture. Despite political turmoil, technological breakthroughs emerged. The war's relentless demand for weapons and fortifications drove advances in metallurgy, while wartime necessities for efficient communication spurred improvements in papermaking and the development of new scripts. China's fragmented landscape profoundly shaped society and culture. Han Chinese migration south accelerated development in the Yangtze River basin, which grew increasingly vital for subsequent dynasties, while the influx of non-Han peoples from the north introduced new customs, cuisines, and attire, elements that gradually integrated into Chinese culture after the 5th century. As the 5th century progressed, the northern political landscape gradually stabilized. The Tuoba Clan's Xiongbi people, through military conquest and marriage diplomacy, established the Northern Wei dynasty in 386 CE. The Northern Wei gradually consolidated its power, conquering or annexing numerous northern states, laying the foundation for the next pivotal phase in Chinese history, the Northern and Southern Dynasties period. During the Northern and Southern Dynasties period, while the Northern Wei dynasty consolidated its power in the north, a complex pattern of feudal warlords emerged in the south, thus ushering in the era known as the Northern and Southern Dynasties. This period 400 to 589 CE China was divided into non-Han regimes in the Northern Han dynasties in the south. While many historians view the Northern Wei's military conquests as the driving force behind unification, the reality was far more complex. Throughout the Northern and Southern Dynasties period, cultural and technological exchanges persisted between non-Han rulers in the Northern Han dynasties in the south. Han regimes coexisted alongside Southern Han dynasties. Although many historians view the Northern Wei's military conquests as the driving force behind unification, the reality was far more complex. Cultural and technological exchanges between North and South, alongside the flourishing arts and literature of southern states, equally laid the groundwork for building a stronger, culturally more diverse Chinese empire. The northern dynasties were founded by the Yuan clan. Leveraging military might and diplomatic acumen, they established formidable power across North China. They gradually annexed or subjugated the northern states. Yet their most significant contribution to Chinese history lay not in military achievements, but in implementing. The Xiongnu rulers recognized the advantages of Han culture and administrative systems, beginning to adopt Han customs, language, and governance structures. This process of cultural assimilation had profound effect. The vitality of nomadic peoples blended with the sophistication of Chinese civilization, giving birth to a unique northern culture. Meanwhile, southern dynasties changed rapidly. Lang, southern Qi, southern Liang, southern Shen, and others all centered around Tang city present-Dane engine. Despite frequent palace intrigues and political upheavals, the southern regimes experienced a period of relative cultural prosperity. The Yangtze River Delta became a refuge for Han elites fleeing northern warfare, drawing numerous literati and scholars to the southern courts. This era witnessed Buddhism's golden age in China. Having developed slowly since its introduction during the Han dynasty, the religion flourished under the patronage of northern and southern dynasties' rulers. Magnificent cave temples like Yonggang and Longmen were carved into cliff faces, their walls adorned with exquisite Buddhist sculptures and murals. These sites served not only as religious centers, but also showcased the fusion of Indian Buddhist iconography with Chinese artistic traditions. Literature, painting, and calligraphy also achieved significant breakthroughs during the northern and southern dynasties. The southern court became a particularly vibrant center for literary activity. Poets such as Dai Yu and Ming, Ling Yun pioneered new poetic forms. Meanwhile, the four calligraphy masters, Wang Zhi, Wang Zhi, Wang Zhi, and Wang Zhi, Wang Zhi, elevated the art of calligraphy to new aesthetic heights. These cultural achievements exerted a profound influence on Chinese civilization. Their artistic and literary traditions endured for centuries. Amidst political fragmentation, this era still witnessed remarkable technological innovations. Improvements in iron smelting techniques yielded superior tools and weaponry. Hydraulic engineering projects, such as canals and irrigation systems, significantly boosted agricultural productivity in the south. Rice cultivation expanded its reach, while drought-resistant crops were introduced in the north. These agricultural advances sustained population growth and economic prosperity in both regions. The era of division also presented challenges. Political turmoil marked the northern and southern dynasties. Court intrigues, military coups, and power struggles were frequent occurrences. Frequent regime changes and shifting alliances fostered an atmosphere of political instability. Yet it was precisely this turbulence that may have catalyzed the period's vibrant cultural and technological vitality. Feudal states competed not only on the battlefield, but also in the cultural sphere. Troubled by power struggles, frequent changes in rulers and unstable alliances created an atmosphere of political turmoil. Yet it was precisely this turbulence that may have fueled the period's vibrant cultural and technological vitality. Feudal states competed not only on the battlefield, but also in the realms of culture and music. Innovation, late 6th century. The stage for unification was set. The rise of the Sui dynasty under Emperor Yuan ended the era of division in 589 AD. The Sui dynasty drew upon strengths from both northern and southern regions, laying the foundation for centralized imperial rule, paving the way for the cultural and political prosperity of the Tang dynasty. As the 6th century drew to a close, China stood on the brink of profound transformation. The rise of the Sui dynasty in 581 AD not only ended centuries of division, but also ushered in a new era that laid the cornerstone for China's golden age. Though the world focused on the grand achievement of unification, the true catalyst for the Tang dynasty's success remained hidden in the shadows of history. What transpired during the Sui dynasty's brief 30-7- year reign that laid the groundwork for such unprecedented cultural and political achievements. Founded by Emperor Wen Yangguang, the Sui dynasty emerged from the turmoil of the northern and southern dynasties, with a grand vision to restore centralized authority and revive China's unity. Drawing strengths from both northern and southern factions, Emperor Wen implemented major political and administrative reforms that shaped China's governance for centuries. He unified the legal system, revitalized the imperial examination system, and strengthened central authority, establishing a governance model later refined by the Tang dynasty. The Sui dynasty's most magnificent and enduring legacy was undoubtedly the Grand Canal. This waterway, stretching over 700 kilometers and linking the Yellow River in the north with the Yangtze River in the south, was not only an engineering marvel, but also a lifeline connecting trade, military logistics, and economic integration between the north and south. Its completion greatly facilitated cultural exchange. 700 kilometers, connecting the Yellow River in the north with the Yangtze River in the south. The Grand Canal was not only an engineering marvel, but also a lifeline linking trade, military mobilization, and economic integration between north and south. Its construction facilitated the exchange of goods, ideas, and culture, laying the foundation for the Tang dynasty's internationalization. The Sui dynasty's infrastructure development extended far beyond the Grand Canal. Emperor Wen and his successor Emperor Yang launched large minor-scale construction projects across the empire, constructing roads, bridges, and fortifications. These projects not only consolidated Sui rule, but also improved transportation and trade across its vast territories. This refined infrastructure proved crucial for the Tang dynasty's later territorial expansion and cultural flourishing. Yet the Sui's grand vision came at a heavy cost. Heavy taxes, forced labor, and conscription imposed to fund massive projects and military campaigns stirred widespread popular discontent. Emperor Yang's campaign against Ryu proved particularly draining on national resources, severely weakening the empire's foundations. These factors ultimately ignited multiple peasant uprisings, setting the stage for the dynasty's collapse in 618 AD. Despite its brief reign, the Sui dynasty's impact on Chinese history remains immeasurable. By unifying China and implementing far-reaching reforms, the Sui established a template for centralized imperial governance, laying the groundwork for subsequent dynasties. The Grand Canal proved especially pivotal, serving for centuries as a vital infrastructure for economic growth and cultural exchange. Artistic fields likewise achieved significant breakthroughs. From painting to sculpture, from architecture to music, Sui-Minus artistic accomplishments were remarkable. It pioneered this centralized governance paradigm that established foundations for future dynasties. The Grand Canal was particularly crucial, remaining for centuries a vital infrastructure for economic growth and cultural exchange. Sui dynasty art, literature, and religion also flourished significantly. Buddhism, which had emerged during the period of division, gained imperial patronage. Buddhism intertwined with revived Confucian values and governance principles, forming a unique cultural landscape that laid the groundwork for the subsequent Tang dynasty's development. When the Sui dynasty collapsed under the weight of its own ambitions, the stage for the Tang dynasty's rise was already set. The Tang inherited a unified China, with its developed infrastructure, centralized bureaucracy, and culturally rich landscape, blending northern and southern elements. But the Tang dynasty's true excellence lay in how it built upon this foundation to achieve great. This dynasty ultimately became one of the most splendid in Chinese history. With the Sui dynasty's demise settled, Chinese history entered a new epoch that propelled the Central Plains to unprecedented cultural and political influence. 618 AD, the Tang dynasty, founded by Wu Zetian, inherited a unified China, with developed infrastructure and a centralized bureaucratic system. Yet the Tang's true greatness lay in how it built upon these foundations to create brilliance, and forged a dynasty hailed as China's golden age. The Tang's rise was swift and decisive. was Etn-born Liu and had served as a general under the Sui dynasty. Having discerned the decaying dynasty's fragility, she decisively seized power to establish her regime. Her son Li Ming played a pivotal role in consolidating authority, ultimately ascending as Emperor Taizong in 626 AD. Under Taizong's rule, the Tang Empire's territory expanded dramatically, stretching from Korea to Central Asia. Emperor Taizong's reign set the tone for Tang splendor. He refined the imperial examination system and implemented a merit-based bureaucratic system that became a model for subsequent dynasties, enabling elites from diverse backgrounds to rise to prominence. His rule established the foundation for the Tang dynasty's splendor. He refined the imperial examination system, establishing a bureaucracy dedicated to selecting capable officials. This system, which became a model for later dynasties, allowed talented individuals from varied backgrounds to enter public service, creating an administrative system capable of efficiently governing the vast empire. The Tang capital Chang'an moderns, undeveloped into the largest and most cosmopolitan city in the world at that time, with a population exceeding 1 million. It dwarfed contemporary European cities, the largest and most diverse city in the world at that time. With a population exceeding 1 million, it dwarfed contemporary European cities. Along Chang, a broad grid-pattern streets, markets selling goods from Asia and beyond lined the streets. Merchants, scholars, and diplomats from Persia, Arabia, and even the Byzantine Empire traversed its grand avenues, forming a great melting pot of cultures and ideas. This cultural exchange established Chang'an as the world's cultural center. Markets selling goods from Asia and beyond lined both sides. Merchants, scholars, and diplomats from Persia, Arabia, and even the Byzantine Empire traversed its grand avenues, forming a great melting pot of cultures and ideas. This cultural exchange was facilitated by the Silk Road, which reached its zenith during the Tang dynasty. This vast trade network not only introduced exotic goods to China, but also fostered the dissemination of technology, religion, and artistic styles. Buddhism flourished in China during this period. The Tang dynasty witnessed an extraordinary flourishing of art and literature. Poetry, in particular, excelled in its exquisite expression. Li Bai and Du Fu, China's two most celebrated poets, were born here. Their works, along with countless creations by Tang poets, are still recited and revered today. Visual arts also flourished, with innovative breakthroughs in painting, sculpture, and ceramics. Their works, along with countless creations by Tang poets, are still studied and celebrated worldwide. Visual arts also flourished, with innovative breakthroughs in painting, sculpture, and ceramics. The renowned Tang triminus color-glazed pottery, with their vivid colors and fluid forms, demonstrated the artistic achievements of this era. Yet the golden age of the Tang dynasty was not without challenges. In 755 AD, the An-Lushan rebellion erupted, plunging the empire into nearly a decade of civil war. An-Lushan, this mixed-race warlord commander, betrayed the Tang dynasty, triggering this upheaval. The golden age of the Tang dynasty was not without challenges. 755 AD, the An-Lushan rebellion erupted, plunging the empire into nearly a decade of civil war. An-Lushan, this mixed-race general of Turkic descent, once a trusted military commander of the Tang dynasty, betrayed the court, exposing the fragility of the empire's vast territories. Though the rebellion was ultimately suppressed, it marked a turning point in Tang history. The authority of the central government was weakened. The empire never fully regained its former glory. Despite this setback, the Tang dynasty persisted for another century and a half, experiencing periods of recovery and cultural renaissance. Its prestige diminished. The empire never fully regained its former glory. Despite this setback, the Tang dynasty persisted for another century and a half, experiencing periods of recovery and cultural renaissance. The reign of Emperor Xuanzong before An-Lushan's rebellion is particularly regarded as the pinnacle of Tang civilization. Under his reign, the arts flourished. The imperial court became a center of learning, and the Tang dynasty's influence extended far beyond its borders. Its cultural and political model was widely emulated by neighboring nations, particularly Japan and Korea. Japan even dispatched Tang envoys to study Tang institutions and culture, resulting in profound influences of Chinese art, literature, and governance systems on Japan. With the decline of the Tang dynasty's influence, China entered a period of political fragmentation. The resilience of its civilization faced severe challenges. The 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms period 907-960 CE witnessed the once mighty empire disintegrate into a fragmented mosaic of rival territories in the north. The 5 dynasties succeeded one another in rapid succession, each striving to control the turbulent frontier, while the south split into 10 independent kingdoms, each carving out its sphere of influence. Short-lived dynasties sprang up and fell like mushrooms after raid, each scrambled to control their unstable territories. Meanwhile, the 10 independent kingdoms in the south each carved out their spheres of influence. The northern lands, once the heart of Chinese power, became an arena for ambitious warlords. Dynasties like later Liang, later Tang, later Jin, later Han, and later Zhou all claimed to hold the mandate of heaven, yet none could establish lasting legitimacy. Military coups and shifting alliances became the norm. Power often changed hands through violence rather than peaceful succession. This turmoil intensified the influence of warlord rulers, military commanders. These powerful figures, who gained significant autonomy during the late Tang period, often functioned as de facto warlords, controlling the turbulent north. Became the norm. Power transitions frequently occurred through violence rather than peaceful succession. This intensified turmoil stemmed from the growing influence of warlord military commanders. These powerful figures, who gained extensive autonomy during the late Tang period, often functioned as de facto warlords, controlling vast territories and resources, making unification a formidable challenge. In contrast, the southern states enjoyed relative stability and prosperity. Cities like Yangzhou and Hangzhou flourished as commercial and cultural hubs. Regions such as Wu, southern Tang, Minchu, who were southern Tang, Min, Chu, and Wu-Yi benefited from fertile local lands and extensive waterways, boosting agricultural development. Maritime trade flourished increasingly, forging close ties between China and Southeast Asia, extending even further afield. This economic vitality enabled the southern states to preserve and advance the cultural achievements of the Tang dynasty, even as the north descended into. Despite political turmoil, this era witnessed extraordinary cultural and technological progress. Decentralized power fostered distinctive regional cultures. Poets and painters found patronage in the courts of local rulers, cultivating a diverse and vibrant cultural landscape. Ceramic art reached new heights. Exquisite porcelain emerged and swept across the entire. Buddhism continued to profoundly influence Chinese society during this period. Monasteries often served as academies and cultural centers, safeguarding the transmission of knowledge through turbulent times. Simultaneously, new intellectual currents quietly took shape. Neo-Confucian thought began to emerge, integrating traditional Confucian ethics with Buddhist and Taoist elements. This philosophical synthesis would profoundly influence Chinese intellectual circles for centuries to come. This era also witnessed significant technological innovations, particularly in agriculture and military affairs. Improved irrigation techniques and the introduction of new crop varieties substantially increased grain yield, sustaining population growth. Even during political upheaval in the military sphere, persistent warfare spurred innovations in weaponry and tactics. Gunpowder technology, first developed during the Tang dynasty, began to spread, though its full potential as a weapon had yet to be realized. As the 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms period progressed, the dream of unification never fully faded. In 960 AD, former military commander Zhao Guangyin staged a coup to seize power. proclaimed himself Emperor Tai's EU, and founded the Song dynasty, leveraging military strength and diplomatic acumen. Zhao Kuang-yin gradually brought most of China under centralized rule. The Song dynasty's unification marked the end of this turbulent era. It opened a new chapter in Chinese history. The Song dynasty, founded in 960 AD, ushered in an era of extraordinary transformation. Its reshaping of China's future far exceeded contemporary expectations. While military might lay the foundation for Emperor Tai's EU, it was the astonishing shift in governance that paved the way for centuries of innovation and cultural prosperity. The rise of the civil service system became a turning point in Chinese history. The rise of the civil service system became a turning point in Chinese history. The merit-based appointment system it established had profound and far-reaching effects. At its core lay the imperial examination system. This system reached unprecedented sophistication during the Song dynasty. These rigorous examinations, based on Confucian classics and other scholarly works, enabled talented individuals from all social strata to enter the political arena. Far-reaching impact. The core of this transformation was the imperial examination system, which reached unprecedented sophistication during the Song dynasty. These rigorous tests, based on Confucian classics and scholarly works, enabled talented individuals from all walks of life to enter the political arena. This merit-based appointment mechanism cultivated a highly educated bureaucracy, who channeled their knowledge and abilities into the complex task of governing a vast empire. The emphasis on education and scholarship permeated society. It propelled a surge in literacy rates and enabled the widespread dissemination of knowledge. The Song dynasty witnessed an explosion of technological innovation, whose impact not only reshaped China, but transformed the entire world. Around 1040 AD, Bangu's invention of movable type printing revolutionized information dissemination. Books, once painstakingly hand-copied by labor-intensive processes and accessible only to elites, could now be mass-produced and widely distributed. This democratization of knowledge accelerated innovation across all fields. The Song dynasty witnessed profound transformations in China's economic landscape. Paper money, an early prototype concept, was fully implemented during this era. This financial innovation spurred unprecedented growth in domestic and cross-border trade. Urban centers expanded rapidly. Kaifeng, the Song capital, became one of the world's largest and most prosperous cities at the time, boasting a population exceeding 1 million. The maritime Silk Road flourished during this period. Through vast maritime merchant networks, Chinese traders ventured as far as East Africa, while foreign merchants from the Middle East and beyond flocked to Chinese ports. This extensive maritime trade network saw Chinese merchants sailing to East Africa, and foreign merchants from the Middle East and beyond arriving in droves. This exchange extended beyond goods, as ideas, technologies, and cultural practices flowed along these routes, enriching Chinese society, while disseminating Chinese innovations worldwide. Not limited to goods, ideas, technologies, and cultural practices flowed along these routes, enriching Chinese society and spreading Chinese innovations across the globe. Despite these advances, the Song dynasty faced persistent threats from powerful nomadic neighbors to the north. The Liao, Jin, and Western Zhou dynasties posed significant military challenges, forcing the Song to rely heavily on diplomacy and tribute systems to maintain peace. Yet this pressure yielded unexpected benefits. Heightened defense demand spurred further technological innovation and compelled the Song government to develop sophisticated diplomatic and economic strategies to sustain foreign relations. In the realm of science, scholars like Shen Kuo made breakthrough discoveries in astronomy, geology, and other disciplines, while Song mathematics achieved significant progress, including the establishment of an algebraic system. Traditional Chinese medicine also made major advances in understanding human physiology. As innovation reshaped Chinese society, a new force was brewing on the northern steppes. The Mongol tribal confederation, led by the charismatic Genghis Khan, the wave of conquest they would unleash, would not only reshape China, but transform the entire known world. In 1271 AD, Genghis Khan's grandson Kublai Khan established the Yuan dynasty, marking China's first fall under foreign rule. Was a pivotal turning point in Chinese history. The Yuan dynasty's rulers understood the necessity of adapting to China's vast and complex territory. They relocated the capital to the Dede, present-day Beijing, marking China's first experience under foreign rule. The Yuan dynasty triggered profound upheaval in Chinese history. Kublai Khan recognized the imperative to adapt China's expansive and intricate lands. He established the capital at Dadu, present-day Beijing. He began creating a unique governance system blending Mongol and Chinese traditions. This cultural fusion had profound effects. From administration to art and cuisine, China under Mongol rule became the largest contiguous land empire in history. The Mongol peace era created unprecedented opportunities for trade and cultural exchange across Eurasia. Its influence was far-reaching. Administrative systems and culinary art were reshaped. China under Mongol rule became part of the largest land empire in history. The Mongol peace era created unprecedented opportunities for trade and cultural exchange across Eurasia. The Silk Road, as a conduit for goods and ideas, experienced unparalleled prosperity during this time. Merchants, diplomats, and travelers from as far as Europe embarked on the road to China, bringing new technologies, religions, and philosophical ideas. It was during this era that the Venetian merchant Marco Polo set out on his famous journey to China. His descriptions of the Yuan court's opulence and grandeur astounded Europeans and reignited fascination with the East, though some historians question the authenticity of Polo's accounts, the narrative's veracity. His work undeniably played a pivotal role in shaping Western perceptions of China for centuries. The Yuan dynasty witnessed significant advancements across fields. Chinese astronomy flourished under Mongol patronage. Observatories were successively established, with unprecedented precision in celestial mapping. Blue-and-white porcelain craftsmanship reached artistic zenith, becoming prized treasures across Asia and Europe. The theatre scene saw the emergence of musical drama in the fall of Zhou, blending Central Asian and indigenous performance elements. Yet the Yuan dynasty was not without turmoil. The Mongols established a rigid social hierarchy. Mongols occupied the top tier, followed by Central Asian ethnic groups, then Northern Han Chinese, with Southern Han Chinese at the bottom. Though this system initially sustained Mongol rule, it sowed the seeds of resentment among the Han majority. Mongol promotion of trade and influx of fur and silver triggered major economic transformations. Paper currency circulated widely, and the economy increasingly monetized, while benefiting some groups. It also fueled inflation and financial instability, especially in the dynasty's late period. As the 14th century progressed, the Yuan dynasty faced mounting challenges, frequent natural disasters like floods and plagues. The 1343 Yellow River diversion caused widespread devastation. These calamities, compounded by heavy taxation and resentment toward Mongol rule, ultimately fueled widespread rebellions. The Red Turban Rebellion erupting in the 1352 signaled the Yuan dynasty's demise. Led by Zhu Yuanzhang, a peasant leader of humble origins who later became the founding emperor of the Ming dynasty, this rebellion deeply resonated with entrenched anti-Mongol sentiment and the profound emotional backlash against Mongol rule. By 1368, rebels captured the Yuan capital, and the last Yuan emperor fled north, bringing nearly a century of Mongol rule to an end. Though the Yuan's collapse marked a turning point in Chinese history, the true transformation had yet to unfold. In 1368, Zhu Yuanzhang, formerly leader of the peasant uprising, ascended the throne as the Han emperor and founded the Ming dynasty. This event not only symbolized a change in ruling authority, but also heralded the revival of Han Chinese culture and the reaffirmation of traditional values. Following nearly a century of Mongol rule, The early Ming dynasty was characterized by resolute efforts to centralize power and restore on institutions. Emperor Han implemented sweeping reforms, abolishing the Mongolian Minus-style political system, reviving the imperial examination system rooted in Confucian thought. These measures not only strengthened imperial authority, but also reaffirmed the central role of classical Han scholarship and meritocratic governance in state affairs. During the Ming dynasty, China experienced economic prosperity and cultural flourishing. Population surged rapidly. Agricultural frontiers expanded. Trade thrived vigorously. Cities like Nanjing and Beijing became commercial and cultural hubs, drawing merchants, scholars, and artisans from across the empire. One of the most remarkable achievements of the early Ming was its naval expeditions. Between 1405 and 1433, 7 large minor-scale voyages, led by the legendary naval commander Zheng, he reached as far as East Africa. These expeditions mobilized hundreds of ships and tens of thousands of crew members, demonstrating the technological prowess of the Ming dynasty in China, while extending diplomatic and trade networks into the Indian Ocean. Yet the Ming dynasty's relationship with the outside world was complex and contradictory. Treasure ships both demonstrated national power and facilitated trade, while the dynasty simultaneously pursued isolationist policies and restricted foreign commerce. This duality profoundly influenced China's positioning within the global order and its interactions with other civilizations. The Ming dynasty is most celebrated for its monumental architectural projects. Emperor Yuan reigned 1400 to 1424, relocated the capital from Nanjing to Beijing, and initiated construction of the Forbidden City. This vast complex of palaces and ceremonial structures served as a symbol of imperial authority, while showcasing the artistic achievements of the Ming era. The Ming dynasty also undertook extensive repairs and expansions of the Great Wall, forming the primary structure visible today. Despite its initial remarkable achievements, the Ming dynasty faced significant challenges during its development. Natural disasters of drought and flooding led to crop failures and famine. In some regions, the silver monetary system faced economic pressures due to shrinking imports and court corruption, and the decay of the bureaucratic system weakened governmental efficiency. By the 16th century, Japanese pirates frequently raided the coast, while northern Manchu forces grew and strengthened, began challenging Ming rule. By the 16th century, the Ming dynasty faced mounting external threats. Japanese pirates raided coastal areas, and northern Manchu forces grew powerful enough to challenge Ming authority. The once formidable Ming army could no longer effectively repel these incursions. Economic hardship and discontent with imperial rule further fueled internal unrest, exacerbating the empire's instability. Early 17th century, a confluence of factors, poor harvests caused by climate change, widespread rebellions, and Manchu invasions from the northeast ultimately brought down the Ming government. 1644, rebel forces captured Beijing. The last Ming emperor took his own life, ending a dynasty that had ruled for 276 years. The Ming dynasty's 276-year reign thus came to an end. The fall of the Ming dynasty in 1644 marked a turning point in Chinese history, yet the true transformation had only just begun. As Beijing fell and the last Ming emperor took his own life, a new power rose in the northeast, the Manchu. How did these nomadic warriors conquer and rule China for nearly 3 centuries? The answer lay in their extraordinary military prowess, political acumen, and cultural adaptability, qualities that reshaped the face of China. In 1644, the Manchus established the Qing dynasty, China's final feudal dynasty. Initially, many predicted the regime would be short-lived, yet they swiftly demonstrated enduring governance. Early Qing rulers consolidated their foundation through military might and strategic alliances. They expanded China's territory to its greatest historical extent, incorporating Tibet, Xinjiang, Mongolia, and Taiwan. This vast multi-ethnic empire endured nearly 3 centuries, witnessed an era of prosperity and cultural flourishing, expanding its territory to its greatest historical extent. Incorporating regions such as Tibet, Xinjiang, Mongolia, and Taiwan. This vast multi-mine, ethnic empire endured nearly 3 centuries, witnessing an age of prosperity and cultural zenith. Under early emperors like Kangxi 1660, 1722 and Qianlong 1735-1796, economic growth, territorial expansion, and cultural integration advanced in tandem. They skillfully blended Manchu and Han traditions to forge a distinctive hybrid culture that became a hallmark of their rule. The king implemented policies such as the Q hairstyle and language requirements to reinforce Manchu dominance, while preserving many Ming administrative systems to ensure efficient governance. The king placed high priority on military modernization, establishing the Green Standard Army and the 8 Banners system. These innovations integrated military and civilian affairs, both consolidating internal stability and repelling external threats. The Qing Empire meticulously maintained its vast river systems and the Grand Canal, underpinning domestic trade and grain transportation. This infrastructure fueled economic growth in both urban and rural areas, laying the foundation for the dynasty's enduring rule. Despite their non-Han origins, Qing emperors actively embraced and promoted Chinese culture. The imperial court remained the center of traditional rituals, scholarly pursuits, and Confucian governance. A complex bureaucracy administered the world's most populous and diverse empire at the time. While catering to the needs of diverse ethnic groups and regions, it also fostered growing foreign influence in trade, leading to tensions with Western powers. These conflicts culminated in the Opium Wars from 1840 to 1855, the most vast and diverse empire, balancing ethnic and regional demands, yet growing foreign influence in Qing trade, sparked tensions with Western powers. These conflicts ultimately escalated into the Opium Wars of 1839-1840 to 1856-1860, resulting in the signing of unequal treaties that eroded Chinese sovereignty. The Qing dynasty's ability to adapt to these new challenges ultimately determined its fate. As the Qing dynasty expanded its territory, they unleashed unforeseen consequences that ultimately led to the dynasty's downfall. The empire's vast expanse, while a source of pride and resources, also stretched the government's capacity for effective governance over the centuries. Maintaining control over such a diverse population and distant territories grew increasingly difficult. The multicultural fusion forged under Qing rule had a profound and enduring impact on Chinese society. Mongol customs and Han culture intertwined, weaving a rich tapestry that continues to shape modern China. This cultural fusion extended into the realms of art, literature, and philosophy, giving rise to new forms of expression that reflected the Qing dynasty's complex identity. In 1683, as the king consolidated its rule over the Central Plains, few could have foreseen the empire's territory would expand to twice its original size. The conquests of Central Asia and Tibet not only expanded China as the Qing Empire expanded to twice its original size. The conquests of Central Asia and Tibet not only extended China's influence, but also brought new challenges. The Qing dynasty had to defend its vast frontier lines against potential invasions, while navigating complex relations with neighbors like Russia. The Qing dynasty's collapse in 1912 marked the end of an era of dynastic rule spanning millennia. Over 2,000 years, imperial rulers rose and fell, dynasties flourished and declined, cycling perpetually like the eternal civilization of the Central Plains. Yet as the dawn of the 20th century broke, this ancient system crumbled amid internal strife. Emperors ruled China through the ages. Each dynasty's rise and fall seemed as eternal as the land itself. But at the dawn of the 20th century, this ancient system disintegrated amid internal strife, external threats, the mounting calls for modernization. The seeds of revolution had long been sown. Decades of humiliation under foreign powers, compounded by the Qing government's inability to modernize effectively. At the start of the new century, these seeds blossomed into a full-scale revolutionary movement. At the forefront of this revolutionary tide stood Sun Y18-, Sen and his Tang Ming Hui organization. They advocated establishing a republican government founded on the three principles of the people: national self-determination, democratic self-governance, and government of the people, by the people, for the people. On October 10, 1911, the watch and uprising ignited this powdered aid. This uprising, beginning in a localized region, spread like wildfire. Province after province declared their secession from Qing rule. The once seemingly unshakable dynasty teetered on the brink of collapse. Desperate to maintain control, the imperial court pinned its hopes on an unexpected savior, the warlord Yuan. This powerful figure, known for his cunning and ambition, maneuvered between revolutionaries and the Qing court, positioning himself as indispensable to averting full-scale civil war. His political maneuvering ultimately led to the abdication of the last emperor, Puyi, on February 12, 1912. The ambitious Yuan simultaneously navigated the revolutionaries and the Qing court, positioning himself as indispensable to averting full-scale civil war. His scheming culminated in a historic moment. February 12, 1912, the last emperor, Puyi, issued an edict of abdication. Thus the imperial system, enduring for over 2 millennia, came to a quiet end with a mere stroke of the pen. Rather than a thunderous crash, on paper, the Republic of China was formally proclaimed. Sun Y18-, Sen briefly served as provisional president. Yet this newborn republic faced immense challenges from its very inception. This vast land, accustomed to centralized authority, now lacked a powerful unifying force. Local warlords began asserting autonomy. The dream of a unified, democratic China seemed precarious even as it materialized. Power soon shifted to Yuan, who ascended to the presidency through political maneuvering. Yuan's rule marked a period both hopeful and perilous for the young republic on one hand. He brought relative stability and implemented several modernizing reforms on the other. His authoritarian tendencies and personal ambitions threatened the very ideals upon which the republic was founded. Yuan Shiqi's reign was both hopeful and perilous for the fledgling republic. On one hand, he brought relative stability and implemented several modernizing reforms on the other. His authoritarian tendencies and personal ambitions threatened the very republican ideals upon which the new nation was founded. In 1915, Yuan Shiqi declared himself emperor, attempting to reverse history and restore monarchical rule. This blatant usurpation sparked fierce opposition across the political spectrum. Faced with widespread resistance, Yuan Shiqi was forced to abandon his imperial ambitions after a mere 83 days. This failed restoration severely undermined Yuan's authority. He passed away shortly thereafter in 1916, plunging China into a vacuum without a strong central government. Yuan's era ushered China into a period of warlordism. Military factions entrenched themselves across the land, making the vision of a unified, democratic China seem more distant than ever. Yet even in this fractured and turbulent period, the seeds of change were quietly taking root. Despite its many flaws, the early republic introduced new ideas and ideals to the Chinese people. The concepts of nationalism, democracy, and modernization took deep hold, and would continue to shape China's political landscape throughout the 20th century. The revolutionary spirit that overthrew the Qing dynasty lives on, inspiring subsequent movements and leaders striving to define China's place in the modern world. After the Qing dynasty collapsed in 1912, the dream of a modern, democratic China seemed within reach. Yet the next chapter of China's story unfolded in ways no one could have foreseen. The power vacuum created after the last emperor abdicated plunged the nation into a chaotic, fragmented period known as the warlord era, unfolding along trajectories few could have anticipated. After the last emperor abdicated, the power vacuum plunged the nation into a chaotic, fragmented period known as the warlord era. The death of Yuan Shiqi in 1916 marked the true beginning of this turbulent era. In the wake of this powerful warlord, who briefly proclaimed himself emperor. Political fragmentation and the collapse of central authority prevailed. Regional warlords, often composed of former Qing dynasty generals, each controlled their own territories and commanded armies as if ruling private fiefdoms. China's map at the time resembled an ever-shifting patchwork quilt. Major factions like -Wen, Fan-Chang vied for power. Alliances formed today, broken tomorrow. Cities like Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou became centers of power. Warlord struggles led to frequent changes in government. Ordinary people bore the crushing weight of instability, struggling under heavy taxes, forced conscription, and constant threats of violence. Struggling under the threat of violence, yet amidst the chaos, ideas began to sprout. The May 4th movement of 1919 ignited a yearning for national self-strengthening and modernization. Intellectuals and students, inspired by Western democratic and scientific thought, began challenging traditional Confucian values, calling for a new culture that could enhance national strength and resist foreign enemies. Modern Chinese literature was born during this period. Writers boldly experimented with vernacular Chinese to reach a broader audience. The political landscape also evolved. Sun Y18-Sen's Chrome in Tang MT sought national unification under a republican government simultaneously. Radical youth influenced by the Russian Revolution founded the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, in 1920. These two parties, initially allied, would shape China's future in ways unimaginable just years before. Economic disparities were stark across the warlord era. Some regions, particularly coastal cities, experienced industrial growth and modernization. Shanghai emerged as a thriving metropolis, whose bustling port linked China to the global economy. Yet most of the country, especially inland rural areas, suffered under warlord rule from poverty, banditry, and exploitation. The absence of a unified national economy hindered overall development, exacerbating existing inequalities. Despite political fragmentation, this era paradoxically strengthened China's national identity. Shared hardships and the yearning for a strong, unified nation brought people together beyond regional divisions. The May 4th movement played a pivotal role in fostering Chinese nationalism, an awareness that persisted long after the warlord era ended. A turning point came during the Northern Expedition of 1926-1928, with Soviet backing and Communist Party collaboration. The National Revolutionary Army, led by Chiang Kai-shek, the military wing of the Kuomintang, launched an northward campaign to crush the warlords and achieve national unification. Chiang's forces advanced steadily, defeating or co-opting rival warlord armies along the way. By 1928, the Northern Expeditionary Army successfully established a new government in Nanjing, marking the formal end of the warlord era, co-opting rival warlord forces along the way. By 1928, the Northern Expedition succeeded in establishing the nationalist government in Nanjing. The applause after the Qing dynasty's collapse, China stood at a historical crossroads. The revolutionary spirit that toppled millennia of imperial rule now faced new challenges: how to forge a modern nation from the ruins of an ancient empire. Yet the path ahead was far from clear. How could this nation, steeped in traditional culture, navigate the turbulent waves of the 20th century? The answer lay in the rise of two powerful forces. They would shape China's destiny for decades to come: the Kuomintang and the Communist Party of China. These opposing forces, born amid the turmoil of the early republic, each proposed a competing vision for China's future, blending traditional wisdom with radical new ideas. The Kuomintang was founded in 1912 by Sun Y18-Sen. This Western-educated physician turned revolutionary envisioned a strong, unified China based on the principles of nationalism, democracy, and people's livelihood. The people's livelihood. His three principles of the people synthesized Chinese philosophy with modern political thought, becoming the ideological foundation of the Kuomintang. Meanwhile, Intellectuals and workers, inspired by the success of the Russian Revolution, formed the Communist Party of China in Shanghai in 1921. The young Mao Zedong was among them. The ideas he would later propose would reshape this movement and the nation itself. The Communist Party offered a radical alternative to the Kuomintang's vision, promising not only to overthrow foreign colonialism, but also vowed to overturn the traditional caste structure that had dominated Chinese society for centuries. Not only did it pledge to overthrow foreign imperialism, but also to subvert the traditional class structure that had governed Chinese society for centuries. Initially, both factions found common ground in opposing warlord fragmentation and foreign influence. In 1923, with Soviet backing, the Kuomintang and the Communist Party formed a fragile alliance known as the First United Front. Its aim was to unify Qing and expel the imperialist forces still controlling vast territories. In 1926, Sun Y18-Sen's Sun Y18-Sen's successor Sun Y18-Sen's Northern Expedition Forces launched the military campaign, achieving major victories, defeating major warlords and establishing the national government in Nanning. By 1928, China finally seemed poised to achieve unity and stability. The Northern Expedition successfully crushed major warlord forces and established the national government in Nanjing in 1928. For a fleeting moment, China finally seemed poised to achieve its long-sought unity and stability. However, the ideological divide between the Kuomintang and the Chinese Communist Party proved irreconcilable. 1927, fearing communist influence within his party, Chiang Kai-shek launched a violent purge known as the Shanghai Massacre. Thousands of communists were arrested or killed, marking the beginning of a civil war that would last over 2 decades with intermittent breaks. Forced underground and expelled from cities, retreated to rural areas and began experimenting with new strategies. Under the leadership of Mao Zedong, the party shifted its focus from urban workers to China's vast rural regions. In the remoteness areas of Jiangxi province, they established Soviet zones, miniature states within state, enabling them to put revolutionary ideals into practice. This experimental period proved crucial to the CCP's future success. They developed new tactics such as guerrilla warfare, land reform, and mass mobilization. These would come to play a pivotal role in the years ahead. Meanwhile, the Kuomintang-controlled government and the Nanjing regime were mired in corruption, economic turmoil, and the escalating threat of Japanese aggression. As the 1930s progressed, Sino-Japanese tensions gradually overshadowed the internal strife between the Kuomintang and the Communist Party. Japan's invasion of Manchuria in 1931 and subsequent escalating incidents ignited a wave of nationalism across China. Both the Kuomintang and the Communist Party found themselves caught in a dilemma between ideological struggles and the urgent need to resist the external enemy. The Sino-Japanese War erupted in 1937, transforming China's civil conflict into a battle for national survival. The Marco Polo Bridge incident near Beijing triggered full-scale Japanese invasion, drawing China into World War II. External threats compelled longtime rivals Kuomintang and Communist Party to forge a fragile alliance. The second Kuomintang-Communist Corporation emerged. But what price did each side pay for their respective visions of China's future? As Japanese forces advanced, major cities fell like dominoes. Beijing, Shanghai, and Nanjing were successively occupied. The Nanjing Massacre of 1937-1938 became one of the war's darkest chapters. Hundreds of thousands of civilians were brutally slaughtered. The nationalist government led by Chiang Kai-shek retreated to Chongqing. From this new capital, the nationalist government coordinated the resistance effort. Meanwhile, the communist forces, led by Mao Zedong, employed guerrilla tactics to gradually expand their influence in Japanese-occupied territories. This strategy won the CCP popular support in rural areas and laid the foundation for its future governance. The war inflicted devastating blows on China. Approximately 20 million compatriots perished. Tens of millions were displaced. Famine ravaged the land, and suffering reached unimaginable levels. The resistance was not ignored by the international community. The United States provided crucial aid through the Lend-Lease Act, including military supplies and advisors, while the vital Burma Road became the lifeline of the resistance movement. These international connections profoundly shaped China's post-war geopolitical landscape. Despite facing overwhelming odds, Chinese forces achieved several major victories. The 1938 Battle of Yuan and multiple Changsha campaigns between 1939 and 1942 demonstrated the indomitable will of China's military and civilian populations. Despite facing overwhelming odds, the Chinese military achieved several major victories. The 1938 defense of Yuan and multiple Changsha campaigns between 1939 and 1942, highlighting the Chinese army's tenacious resolve and tactical ingenuity. While these victories failed to alter the overall course of the war, they prevented Japan from gaining complete control over eastern China. The brutality and protracted nature of the war profoundly reshaped Chinese society. Traditional social structures disintegrated under the weight of conflict. New forms of nationalism and political ideologies emerged. The shared experience of resisting foreign aggression fostered a national cohesion that transcended existing divisions. Yet this unity proved fragile. Underlying tensions between the Kuomintang and the Communist Party simmered beneath the surface. As the war progressed, China's internal power dynamics underwent a significant, quiet transformation. The Communist Party's guerrilla tactics and rural popular support stood in stark contrast to the Kuomintang's conventional military methods and urban power base. This divergence in strategy and support foundations would profoundly influence the post-war struggle for control over China. 1945, the Second Sino-Japanese War finally concluded. Yet victory was not achieved solely by Chinese strength. Japan's defeat stemmed from the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the Soviet invasion of Manchuria. When Japanese forces surrendered, China emerged victorious yet lay in ruins. Infrastructure reduced to rubble, economy in complete collapse, its people deeply scarred by years of brutal occupation. Post-war China faced the monumental task of reconstruction. Yet the fragile alliance between the nationalists and communists rapidly unraveled. Ideological differences and power struggles, once temporarily set aside, erupted with renewed intensity. This marked the opening act of the final decisive battle in China's civil war. This conflict would determine the future course of the world's most populous nation. As the smoke of World War I finally cleared, China found itself standing on the precipice of another monumental struggle. The fragile alliance barely maintained during the War of Resistance against Japan had now completely disintegrated, reigniting the flames of civil war between the nationalists and communists. This conflict would ultimately shape the destiny of the world's most populous nation and paved the way for China's rise as a global superpower in the decades to come. The stage for global superpower ascendance. Under Mao Zedong's leadership, the Communist Party consolidated rural strongholds through land reform and efficient guerrilla tactics during the war years, gaining widespread peasant support and establishing a solid foundation. Meanwhile, Chiang Kai-shek's Nationalist Party, though controlling major cities, enjoying numerical military superiority and foreign backing from the United States and others, yet they were mired in corruption, low morale, and strategic military missteps. When hostilities resumed in 1946, Kuomintang forces held the upper hand, capturing key cities and driving communist troops back. But by 1947, the tide began to turn. The Communist Party launched a series of highly effective counteroffensives. The People's Liberation Army, as the military arm of the Communist Party, employed flexible tactics to exploit weaknesses in Kuomintang defenses, mobilized peasant support, and waged guerrilla warfare, gradually shifting the balance of power. 1948, with the launch of the Lushu and Qing campaigns, the war reached a turning point in these large minor-scale military operations. The PLA flexibly applied tactics, exploited Yuan and Tang weaknesses, mobilized peasant support, conducted guerrilla warfare, and gradually turned the tide, mobilizing peasant support, conducting guerrilla warfare, gradually shifting the balance of power. The 1948 Lianhui and Qing campaigns became pivotal in these large minor-scale military operations. The PLA decisively defeated Kuomintang forces through tactical superiority. The CCP's promises of land redistribution, social reform, and anti-corruption measures continued to win over the Chinese people. By 1949, the war had completely shifted in favor of the communists. As the they swept across the nation, and cities fell one after another. The Kuomintang, despite American supplied weapons and numerical superiority, could not withstand the CCP's strategic wisdom and popular support. Chiang Kai-shek and his followers were forced to retreat to coastal regions, and ultimately fled to Taiwan on October 1, 1949. October 1, 1949, Mao Zedong stood atop Beijing's Tiananmen Gate and proclaimed the founding of the People's Republic of China. This moment not only marked the end of the Chinese Civil War, but also ushered in a new epoch in Chinese history. The world's most populous nation fully entered the era of communist rule. Over the subsequent decade, this development profoundly reshaped the global political landscape. Note: strictly preserved original structures requested, including 1. Retained all paragraph breaks and musical notation. 2. Maintained original forms of all timelines, place names, and party designations. 3. Adopted standard Chinese news reporting phrasing, for example marked, ushered in a new era. 4. Handled special expressions Mong translated as Mao Zedong phonetic transcription annotation Jumma victory rendered as in the decades to come conforming to Chinese news style vast peasant population translated as the vast peasantry appropriate for Chinese context. 5th, consistent key terminology CPC rendered as Chinese Communist Party, PSC rendered as People's Republic of China. 6. Special symbols preserved unchanged, and its commitment to land reform deeply resonated with China's vast peasant population, low oppressed by an unequal land system. Moreover, drawing invaluable lessons from repeated defeats against the Kuomintang in the 1922 and 1932, the CPC forged a disciplined, ideologically steadfast fighting force within the People's Liberation Army and honed its tactics through years of guerrilla warfare against Japanese invaders in the Kuomintang. In contrast, though initially dominant, it increasingly alienated itself from the Chinese people, especially in rural areas. The outcome of the Civil War reshaped East Asia's geopolitical landscape. The Kuomintang's retreat to Taiwan created a political division that persists to this day, while also laying the groundwork for decades of Sino-American tension. The United States continued to recognize the Kuomintang government in Taiwan as the legitimate ruler of China until the 1949. As the dust settled after decades of war, China stood at the threshold of a new era. The charismatic communist leader Mao Zedong emerged victorious from the protracted civil war. His vision of a socialist China would reshape the nation's trajectory for the next 3 decades, ushering in an era of radical transformation and upheaval. Mao's primary task was to consolidate power and reshape Chinese society. Shortly after the new regime's establishment, it launched the land reform movement, aimed at dismantling traditional rural power structures. Land was confiscated from wealthy landlords and redistributed to impoverished peasants. This initiative garnered widespread rural support, though the process was far from peaceful. Violence and executions were commonplace. Old grievances and new enmities were settled, class enemies purged. By 1958, Mao confidently launched his most ambitious project yet, the Great Leap Forward. This massive campaign aimed to rapidly transform China from an agrarian society into an industrial powerhouse. Nationwide, people were organized into vast rural communes. Farmers were ordered to abandon traditional farming methods and adopt experimental techniques promising miraculous yield increases. Simultaneously, backyard steel furnaces sprang up across cities and villages. As part of the Great Leap Forward steel production drive, the results proved disastrous. Experimental farming methods failed catastrophically, leading to widespread crop failures. Meanwhile, steel production quotas forced many farmers to abandon their fields. Local officials falsified harvest reports to evade punishment. Actual grain output plummeted sharply. The ensuing Great Famine in China became an unprecedented humanitarian catastrophe. Between 1959 and 1961, approximately 30 million people died from starvation and related illnesses. The failure of the Great Leap Forward temporarily weakened Mao's, Deng's dominant position within the party. While moderates like Li Xiaozhou and Deng Xiaoping gained influence by implementing policies to stabilize the economy and improve people's livelihoods. However, Mao was unwilling to step back from the limelight. In 1966, he launched the Cultural Revolution. This movement plunged China into a decade of chaos and violence. The Cultural Revolution initially aimed to purge capitalist souls within the party and society, along with other perceived enemies of socialism. Mao mobilized millions of youths into Red Guards to carry out his directive. Schools were shut down. Students took to the streets. They denounced teachers, intellectuals, and even their own parents as counter-communist revolutionaries. Under the banner of sweeping away the old and establishing the new, cultural heritage was vandalized or destroyed. As the movement spiraled out of control, it devolved into a complex power struggle. Red Guard factions clashed violently. Mao's rivals within the party were purged. The military was eventually deployed to restore order, but by then, countless lives had been destroyed or appended. The exact death toll of the Cultural Revolution remains unknown. Estimates range from hundreds of thousands to millions. Despite domestic turmoil, Mao-led China pursued a hard-line foreign policy. The Sino-Soviet split, beginning in the late 1950s, intensified during this period. China positioned itself as the rival center of communist ideology, challenging the Soviet Union's leadership within the global socialist movement. Leadership of the global socialist movement. This shift in the geopolitical landscape drew American attention, leading to a thaw in Sino-American relations in 1972. U.S. President Richard Nixon made a historic visit to China, marking China's return to the world stage. Mao Zedong's death in 1976 signaled the end of an era. His historical legacy remains complex and contradictory, hailed as the leader who unified China and established a powerful central authority. His rule was also marked by political repression, economic missteps, and widespread human suffering. The wounds inflicted by the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution took decades to heal. As the dust settled on China's turbulent mid-20th century, China navigated a tumultuous period in the mid-20th century. With Deng Xiaoping's rise in 1978, a new era began. Just 2 years after Mao's death, Deng became China's paramount leader, laying the groundwork for profound transformation. This transformation reshaped not only China, but the global economic landscape. Deng's vision for China's development diverged sharply from his predecessors. Mao emphasized ideological purity and class struggle. Deng Xiaoping adopted a pragmatic approach, supreme leader, laying the groundwork for a transformation that reshaped not only China, but also the global economy. Deng Xiaoping's governance philosophy diverged sharply from his predecessors. Mao Zedong emphasized ideological purity and class struggle. Deng Xiaoping adopted a pragmatic approach. He famously declared, "It doesn't matter if a cat is black or white, as long as it catches mice." This philosophy underpinned Deng's bold reform and opening-minded policies, aimed at modernizing China's economy. Reform began in the countryside. With the abolition of the collective farm system and the implementation of the household contract responsibility system, farmers gained autonomy over their land and could sell surplus produce on the market. Results were immediate. Agricultural output surged, and rural incomes rose significantly, lifting millions out of poverty. Yet Deng Xiaoping's ambitions extended far beyond agriculture. In 1980, he established special economic zones S in coastal cities like Shenzhen, Shanghai, and Xiamen. These regions became testing grounds for market-oriented policies, attracting foreign investment and nurturing private enterprises. The success of the S was nothing short of miraculous. The once quiet fishing village of Shenzhen transformed within decades into a bustling metropolis and technology hub. As China's economy diversified, its integration with global markets deepened, earning the nation the title World's Factory, with manufacturing spanning textiles to electronics, and exports reaching every corner of the globe. This export-driven growth strategy complemented domestic reform, propelling China's economic ascent. From 1978 to 1997, China achieved an average annual GDP growth rate of 9.6%. This sustained growth rate was unprecedented in human history, yet Deng Xiaoping's reform vision had limitations. While promoting economic liberalization, he insisted on strict political control. This tension reached its peak during the 1980 Tiananmen protests, when students and workers demanded political reform alongside economic transformation. The government's violent suppression of the protests shocked the world and exposed China's vulnerability to setbacks. Deng Xiaoping continued advancing his reform agenda. In 1992, he embarked on his southern tour to inspect special economic zones and reaffirm China's commitment to market-oriented reforms. This inspection revitalized the reform process by driving further economic openness and a more proactive embrace of global trade. Deng's pragmatic spirit also shaped his foreign policy. He normalized relations with the United States and other Western nations, recognizing that China's development required active integration into the international community. This approach proved highly effective, for resources poured into China, bringing not only capital, but also technology and management expertise. The pinnacle of the Deng era arrived in 1997 with Hong Kong's return to China. This landmark event, grounded in the one country, two systems principle, signaled China's return to the world stage as a major power. It symbolized both the end of a century of humiliation beginning with the Opium Wars, and the opening of a new chapter in Chinese history. A new chapter in history. Deng Xiaoping's reforms fundamentally altered China's developmental trajectory by embracing market principles while maintaining political control. This unique development model challenged Western perceptions of the relationship between economic and political liberalization. It successfully lifted hundreds of millions out of poverty, transformed China into an economic powerhouse, and will profoundly influence the global balance of power for decades to come. As the 20th century drew to a close, China stood at the threshold of a new era. The return of Hong Kong and Macau to Chinese sovereignty not only signaled the end of European colonial rule in China, but also symbolized the reaffirmation of China's standing on the world stage. These two transfers, occurring in 1997 and 1999 respectively, tested China's ability to balance its growing economic power with political governance, and set the tone for the challenges and opportunities of the 21st century. Hong Kong's story began 150 years ago. When seeded as a British colony, it embarked on a unique developmental journey. As its economic strength grew, could it effectively manage its political landscape? This set the tone for the challenges and opportunities of the 21st century. Hong Kong's story began over 150 years ago. Following the First Opium War in 1842, this territory was ceded to Britain. Over the following decades, this small island rapidly transformed into a global financial hub. Its dazzling skyline of towering skyscrapers bears witness to its economic miracle. Yet in 1984, after years of negotiations, The Sino-British Joint Declaration established the one country, two systems principle. The day of Hong Kong's return to the motherland drew near. This innovative arrangement promised to preserve Hong Kong's special status. The countdown to the end of its days as a British colony had begun. 1980, for after years of negotiations, the Sino-British Joint Declaration established the framework for Hong Kong's return to China. Guided by the one country, two systems principle, this innovative arrangement pledged to maintain Hong Kong's capitalist economy, legal system, and civil liberties for 50 years after the handover, while acknowledging China's sovereignty. This unprecedented governance experiment sought to bridge the gap between two starkly different political and economic systems. The world watched this transformation with mixed emotions. Capitalist economy, legal system, and civil liberties. Under the premise of acknowledging China's sovereignty, this unprecedented governance experiment ought to bridge to fundamentally different political and economic systems. As July 1, 1997 approached, the world watched with a blend of hope and apprehension. The hand-over ceremony itself was an epic spectacle. As the midnight chimes rang out, the British flag was lowered for the final time. The Chinese flag was raised. Prince Charles and then Chinese President John Im jointly presided over the ceremony, symbolizing the peaceful transfer of power from the world's oldest monarchy to the largest communist nation. For many Hong Kong residents, this moment was bittersweet. While returning to the motherland, the outlook for the next 2 years remained uncertain. 2 years later, on December 20, 1999, Macau witnessed a similar scene. This former Portuguese enclave, under European rule since the 16th century, also returned to Chinese sovereignty under the one country, two systems framework, though Macau's handover drew less global attention than Hong Kong's. It held equal significance for China's national narrative. In the years following their return, both regions achieved economic growth and transformation. Hong Kong continued to thrive as a vital financial hub. Its stock market increasingly became a key platform for Chinese enterprises seeking international investment. Macau, leveraging its unique advantages, emerged as a gateway for mainland Chinese companies to expand into international markets. In the years following their return, both regions experienced economic growth and transformation. Hong Kong continued to thrive as a vital financial center, with its stock market growing increasingly important for Chinese enterprises seeking international investment. Macau embraced a new role as Asia's Las Vegas, where the casino industry flourished under Chinese administration. The success of these regions appears to validate the one country, two systems policy, demonstrating China's, however, beneath the facade of prosperity. Political tensions continue to simmer, particularly in Hong Kong. For many Hong Kongers, the promised 50-year period of autonomy has become a countdown. They increasingly worry about the erosion of civil liberties and democratic governance. Protests and debates over the boundaries of one country two systems are intensifying, challenging Beijing's blueprint for the region's future, envisioning Hong Kong's future. The return of Hong Kong and Macau represents not merely the recovery of lost territories, but a litmus test for China's ability to navigate complex political and economic traditions. As China ascends as a major power on the global stage, the international community will closely scrutinize its governance of former colonies. The success or failure of the one country, two systems model in Hong Kong and Macau will have repercussions far beyond their borders. It may shape how China handles other territorial disputes and its broader foreign policy. At the dawn of the new millennium, China emerged as a global engine reshaping the world order, upending conventional wisdom about the relationship between economic and political development. Its rapid rise stemmed from a unique fusion of state-directorial governance, a model turned socialism with Chinese characteristics. Under the leadership of Hu Jintao and later Xi Jinping, China pursued ambitious reforms, consolidating its position as the world's second-largest economy, which achieved robust growth through manufacturing exports, sports industries, and technological innovation. China's accession to the World Trade Organization in 2001 marked a watershed event that injected powerful momentum into the global economy. China achieved robust growth through manufacturing exports, sports industries, and technological innovation, solidifying its position as the world's second-largest economy. Joining the World Trade Organization in 2001 became a watershed moment in the process of global economic integration. This move opened the floodgates for foreign investment and trade. It propelled China's economic modernization to unprecedented heights. Cities like Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Beijing transformed into dazzling metropolises. Their skylines now feature iconic structures symbolizing China. Hundreds of millions of Chinese people were lifted out of poverty. The middle class has expanded dramatically, creating a vast consumer market that attracts global companies to compete for entry. But China's ambitions extend far beyond this. In 2013, President Xi Jinping proposed the Belt and Road Initiative, a global infrastructure and investment plan designed to strengthen connectivity across Asia, Africa, and Europe. This modern Silk Road aims to cement China's global leadership, expanding its economic and political influence through networks of railways, ports, and trade agreements. Though met internationally with both enthusiasm and skepticism, the initiative signals China's proactive expansion of its economic and political reach by forging global economic ties. This modern Silk Road seeks to cement China's global leadership by amplifying its economic and political influence through networks of railways, ports, and trade agreements. While the initiative has elicited both enthusiasm and skepticism internationally, it signals China's ambition to reshape global trade patterns and geopolitics. In the realm of technology, China has achieved major breakthroughs, establishing leadership in cutting-edge fields. The nation is pouring resources into developing artificial intelligence, 5G networks, and renewable energy, striving to dominate future industries. Chinese companies like Huawei, Alibaba, and Tencent have grown into global tech giants, challenging Silicon Valley's hegemony in space exploration. China has achieved notable accomplishments through its trained lunar missions and the construction of its independent space station, earning its place among the world's leading space powers. However, China's rise has not been without challenges. Politically, the nation maintains authoritarian rule under Communist Party leadership. Xi Jinping has consolidated power through measures unprecedented since the Mao era, following the removal of presidential term limits in 2016. His political influence continues to expand. The path to ascendance has been fraught with challenges and controversies. Politically, China maintains authoritarian governance under Communist Party leadership. Xi Jinping has consolidated power in ways unseen since the Mao era. The 2018 removal of presidential term limits signaled China's departure from decades of collective leadership, sparking questions about its future governance trajectory. China's increasingly assertive posture on the global stage has heightened geopolitical tensions, particularly with the United States, where conflicts have escalated. The two nations have clashed fiercely over market access, intellectual property, and technological competition. This culminated in a full-scale trade war. Full-scale trade war. The two nations have clashed fiercely over market access, intellectual property, and technological competition. China's territorial claims in the South China Sea and its stance on Taiwan have become flashpoints in international relations. Meanwhile, human rights issues in Xinjiang, Hong Kong, and other regions have drawn widespread international condemnation. China's territorial claims in the South China Sea and its stance on Taiwan have become flashpoints in international relations, while human rights issues in Xinjiang, Hong Kong, and other regions have drawn widespread international criticism. The one country, two systems model, originally designed for Hong Kong and Macau, faced its greatest test in 2019. Hong Kong witnessed its largest post-hand-over protests, with millions taking to the streets to oppose a proposed extradition bill, and expressed broader concerns over eroding autonomy. Beijing's response included enacting the Hong Kong National Security Law in 2020, marking a further tightening of control over the former British colony, raising questions about the region's civil liberties outlook. The countermeasures, including the 2020 National Security Law, signaled an escalating grip on the former British colony and sparked concerns about the region's civil liberties' future. China's journey from ancient Yellow River pathways to global superpower is an epic tale of resilience and transformation, where the balance between tradition and innovation has shaped a culture that influences the modern world. If you find yourself drawn to this remarkable journey, be sure to subscribe for deeper insights. As China continues to advance, its history will keep offering invaluable lessons for global dynamics.